Here we go. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Jesse, before we go in to detail of the stuff we're going to talk about today, do you want to give the listeners a little bit of an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure. So about 14 years ago, I arrived in Dubai and I was cabin crew and I didn't train. I did the standard arrive in Dubai, party a lot, eat a lot, put on weight. Exactly. And then a few years into flying, I was on a trip and I put my back out. And while I was at the osteopath after that trip, they said, you need to get fit or you're going to keep having problems. I still to this day say it's the best medical advice I've ever been given. And I wish more doctors would give that advice as just general medical advice. But that got me into, okay, I need to like start thinking about my fitness again. And of course I started out with like general group exercise classes. I was doing your Les Mills and your choreographed classes and things like that. But I'm the kind of person that gets bored quickly. So I would learn the choreography because I had a background in dance when I was younger. So I'd learn the choreography and then I'm like, oh, I already know like what's coming next. So it got boring for me quite quickly. And then of course I wanted to feel like I was progressing. So it was like, I'm doing the hardest version of the workout. And I didn't feel like there were people that were better than me always around me. And I was in a circuit class one day and there was like, the heaviest weights were like little 5 kilo dumbbells. And I thought, where can I find somewhere where I'm going to be challenged more? And that's when someone told me to try CrossFit. So that was way back in the day when it was LifeSpark and the Burn Room.
So obviously like a lot, the listeners obviously know my background and they've noticed a theme of people that come on, they all kind of like go through CrossFit. But what's quite nice about everybody's story is that CrossFit's almost like that gateway for a lot of people's exercise. Obviously, it was for you coming from GX. From me, I guess it was a very similar story. I used to teach a lot of GX and, general bodybuilding type training. You go into CrossFit and then there's so many we should be careful how we talk about CrossFit now, but there's so many dynamics to CrossFit that you can go out in different directions. And I guess that's what happened to you, right?
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. I started out and it's you get addicted to the community and the challenge and being pushed and there's always new things to learn. And I threw myself all in and decided like that first year I did the open and, the barrier for entry at competition level was a little lower and ended up on a team going to regionals. And I was like, oh, this is something I want to get better at. I want to be able to really compete at it. So I spent the next little over 3 years all in, training twice a day, trying to be as good as I could possibly be at CrossFit. And then it was 2016, I went to regionals again with a team and I was like, I'm tired. I'm really tired. I can't keep doing this all the time, but I also loved the competition and I loved being really strong. So I decided to transition to powerlifting. I started working with a powerlifting coach with the goal of getting an elite total in Australia so I could represent Australia. Oh. So I did that, and after my first year lifting, I got my elite total. And then in the second year, I got to represent Australia at a few competitions and at the World Championships.
Oh, that's amazing.
So that was being able to represent the country is like a thing I'd never in my wildest dreams could have imagined. Growing up, I never thought that was something that was possible for me. And then if you'd asked me when I first started training, and told me that was where I would end up. Like
you went from lifting 5 kg dumbbells in a Les Mills class to lifting, I don't know, probably a lot heavier than what I can lift.
Well, a lot heavier than I can lift right now.
That's awesome. Listen, I'm pretty sure that you're going to tie in other experiences from your training, from other areas of your life as well. But let's kind of get a little bit deeper into what you're doing now, because I think it's, you know, I follow your content a lot through social media. Obviously, the Sharer Life is what you do. You've done a lot of kind of like seminars, and I'm always hearing good things from that. So what do you want to, how can you explain that to the listeners?
Yeah, so the Sharer Life, we launched a little over a year ago, our first events. So we started with in-person events with the purpose of building a community and an education platform. This came from my realization that I got to where I am because I had access to really incredible coaches and teachers, and purely by luck, just where we are in the world, we had great people around us. And I had, like, one of my powerlifting coach was a world champion. And I have people like that around me that I could learn from, which meant I was able to progress fast, and things that seemed impossible weren't impossible because other people I knew were doing them. But I realized in the last few years that that is an exception, not the rule. Most people don't have that type of access. And I wanted to create a platform for people to get access to quality information and coaching. I also wanted to create a platform for females who were experts to be heard, because in the fitness industry, especially, it is still a male-dominated industry. And in most industries, it's generally, even if a woman is very good at what they do, often women decide, oh, if I'm going to have a family, it takes time out of their career. And so a lot of women will be very good at what they do, but they don't have a large platform. So I wanted to create a place where we could give those people a voice to a community. So we started with live events, bringing in experts and having an all-female audience. And it's all things related, health, fitness, but also mental health and well-being. We talk about sort of more alternative spirituality and connection to yourself, and just having really like authentic, vulnerable conversations. And so we're now transitioning. This has always been the plan, but we're now about to launch the website, which is essentially a membership site where we have experts contributing content, written content, classes, and then we're doing live events and things as well. And then we're building like a massive exercise library, and there's training programs, and there's all kinds of things included in that.
Just a big hub of information. So obviously, because I know you and your experience, and the people that you're getting talking at these events are obviously being, they're coming through you, their experiences there. Like what I like most about it is that you've not just got this, you've not just gone down that route of the training experience in terms of you reached the level that you did in powerlifting, competing at regionals. Yeah, it was the earlier days, but it's still a massive accomplishment. You've got that knowledge around training, how if someone came to you now as a trainer, you could get them to where they want to be in terms of physique or fitness goals. But what you're tying in all the other factors that go around it, right? And that's probably what gets neglected the most. And I see it on a day-to-day basis, even just dealing with maybe a client for the first time whose goal is to lose a little bit of weight. And you kind of just want to go like, hang on, it's literally not about the exercise that you're doing today. There's so much more to it. So have you, the people that you've got on board, are they really kind of taking that? I guess it's like a holistic approach, right?
Yeah, it is diverse, and it is obviously people that align with the vision that I have, and who have a holistic approach, especially when it comes to training. I think the comment that you made just now about the majority of the people that come to you are just a normal person trying to get fit. So the requirement for me in my training, if I'm trying to qualify as like for the world championships, that requirement in training is very different to someone who just wants to be fit and healthy. Like, you're going to have to take extreme actions to get to that extreme level. And I think most people end up comparing themselves to that, like, oh, I see this athlete on social media, or I see this fitness model or whatever else, and they think I want to do their training program. But the reality is that what's happening in your life is not the same as what's happening in their life. So your choices need to be different.
That was one of the questions that I was going to ask you towards the end, but we'll get into it now, like getting influenced by the wrong things. Obviously, social media is great, and then we could go all day on its positives and then its negative sides of it as well. We have access to other people's training programs, and how much do you see that happening? You've just mentioned it then, people putting so much emphasis on following someone else's program when their lives can be totally mismatched. But for some reason, we still have this interpretation that, hey, I can do that. Like I've done it myself, you know, following Ben Bergeron's Games Athletes Plan. When I just started CrossFit, hey, I'll do the games version. I'm like, oh, I'll do the reps, I'll do this. So how important is that to understand what you're capable of, I guess, knowing your own body, right?
Yeah. I think that's something that as coaches, it's really our responsibility to help educate our clients to be more self-aware. Because I say this all the time when I'm teaching new coaches. The majority of people that come into the gym, like if you say to them, like, what's happened, like what's present in your body right now, they can't tell you. We've become so disassociated from our physical experience. So like, how often have you driven somewhere and then you get there and you don't remember any of the experience getting there? Like, I think as a population, people have been so in this rat race that like we're not present in our lives. So when someone walks into the gym and you explain a workout to them, they're like, their mind's over here. They're not at all present in the situation. So like this has been a point for me, like every time I watch someone coaching a class and people walk in and that very first moment you start talking to them at the board, like they're not present in the moment. So like they're not absorbing any information that you've just talked at them about. So I like to use tools to get people present in their bodies and then talk to them. So I think that's
it's almost like you always say, especially when people are coming from busy lives as well, right? They come from work, maybe they get stuck in a bit of traffic, they're all wound up, maybe their partner's telling them, hey, you need to make sure you're home at this time, and they're already doubting it if they're going to go and do the workout. They just they know they need to go in and get it done, relieve a bit of stress. And I guess that's a big one for me recently, just being in the moment, just being present with the things that you're doing, even to the point where I watch TV at night rather than just putting the TV on and sitting on my phone, which I know majority of people do. It's actually going, right, I'm going to watch this show and I'm going to go and put my phone somewhere else. So I'm taking it in, like I'm watching this show for a reason, just being present in the moment.
Yeah. And like we've all been guilty of that. One of my old flatmates, like a few years ago, she used to say, every time like we're having a conversation, you're always looking at your phone. Like you're always like, you're so split in your attention. So in training, I guess like that's where all of my work is right now, is sort of teaching people how to be present in their bodies and then how to adapt training based on that. We briefly spoke earlier about, like before we recorded, or about the idea of autoregulation.
Yeah.
So people who are familiar with the concept probably think of like systems that we use, especially in strength training. A lot of people who are used to like more functional fitness don't understand this quite so well. But in strength training, we use systems to regulate the amount of work we do so we can continue making progress. So when I'm powerlifting, I'm lifting, I'm squatting 3 or 4 times a week. So I can't add weight every single time I lift, but depending on how my body feels, I'm going to try to continue making some type of progress. So we use systems like rate of perceived exertion or reps in reserve to regulate. So or we can put, say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how does my body feel today? And we're trying to, so we're going to adapt the volume of work we do based on how the body feels. And so we have sort of a target that if things feel amazing, that's the number we'll hit. But depending on how we are on that scale, maybe the number will be less today. So that's like, we have those systems that we're used to using in a strength training concept. But when I talk about autoregulation with clients, it's about the understanding that we have to adapt for all of your needs. And it's not just like do I hurt today? It's my body and your body are different. So how I perform the movement is going to be different to how you perform the movement. And then, so that's going to be one thing that we have to adapt. Like you and I will squat differently because our bodies are not the same. Alternative, then the second would be that like your body, like you know how your body feels. So like it might look easy to you, but how you're experiencing that will be different. But also that's a trained response. So like I can watch my lifts and I know that wasn't that hard for me because I can see how fast it was moving. But in the moment when I feel it, oh my God, it can feel like the heaviest weight in the world. But that's a trained response because I've been exposed to it over and over and over again. I know how hard I can push before I actually fail. So I do understand what failure means. Whereas most people that come into the gym don't know that. So your untrained person will come into the gym and everything feels like death. So we have to create that environment that's that safe exposure so that they can continue pushing that boundary.
You know, now I'm back coaching in the gym as well at base. When someone first comes in and you can see how enthusiastic they are, how motivated they are, especially, you know, coming into a strength and conditioning gym that has that kind of atmosphere and people lifting heavy weights and, you know, loud music, that type of stuff. And first thing I always say is like, right, let's just slow it down. You know, you see them, they want to go as fast as they can, lift as much as they can. And my first thing is always like, hey, it's not about what you do today. It's about where we're going to get you to. What you do today, you're going to end up, if you associate this like really terrible feeling of like lying on the ground in the puddle of your own sweat, and like you're going to build up this kind of like barrier to wanting to get back to that. I'm just like, hey, let's just start from here. And that's a really hard thing to do. You to put it into other areas of life. Like you don't go from 0 to 100 straight away. You're happy to build up and learn, like reading a book or something like that. If you're not used to reading, you don't try and read a book in one night. You say, right, I'm going to read a couple of pages, and then maybe the next day you read 4 or 5 pages, and you build up that way. But for some reason with training, I don't know whether it's the influence of things like social media, because of the lack of education, like you've mentioned already, that there's this like all-in approach all the time. And like yourself, me, you know, just speaking to Craig this morning, you know, we're listening to our bodies. Like we come in and go, that's what I try and tell, you know, some of my clients as well. Hey, how are you feeling today? If you're not feeling that great, let's back it off a little bit. You know, you're going to get loads more from just backing off because you're going to feel fresh for the next day, rather than trying to go, let's try and lift as heavy as we can today, blow your back out, niggle your hamstring, and then not being able to do something for the next few weeks.
Yeah. There's a few things that you raised there. The first one is that you ask, how are you feeling today? And I think often we come in with this, like, this is what's on the program, I have to do this.
Yeah.
Rather than what's present for me in this moment. So, and that can be what's present in my body, it's what's present in my life right now, like what's affecting my experience now, and then making a choice on how you're going to execute your workout. And it's like in a class setting, it doesn't mean that you don't have to do the class, though sometimes it might mean that. I always made it clear to the members, like if there's something that you need that like the program doesn't feel like it's serving you right now, let's have that conversation. So I had, like, for example, a member came in and she was like so angry. She was so like furious after like stuff that had been going on in her day. And literally the idea of doing a structured warm up, like she's like, I can't do that. I literally, like you could see her, she was like shaking. So like I threw her in the corner and I said, you're going to grab this sandbag and you're just going to throw it. You're going to throw it as hard as you can, like 3 times every minute for 5 minutes. And I'm like, you imagine that's your boss and I want you to get really angry and let it all out. And she came back and was able to be present in the class after that. But if you're not aware of yourself enough to be able to say, this is what I need, and as a coach, you're not aware of how the experience is changing from person to person, then you're sort of failing yourself and your clients.
I feel like so many, when I look around at, you know, like yourself, and I keep mentioning Craig, obviously at base, and people who you've seen go through that competitive CrossFit, not necessarily CrossFit, but competitive environment, and they're training now and what it looks like. Hey, listen, I'm a massive promoter of following a program. I think if you want to make the most progress and look after your body and you're willing to train at like those higher intensities, you need to either have a coach or be following like a good program where, you know, the coach does ask how you are and those types of things, because that's how you make the most progress. But hey, if you're not in that frame of mind where you're not actively trying to make progress, but like we said before, you're just trying to, you know, we talk about balance, find some balance, maintain your general health and fitness. You know that when you move, you start to eat better and your mood is improved, that type of stuff. Like for me right now, if I come into the gym and I've got a program there to follow, I'm probably not going to do it. And it's almost enough for me to go, I'll train tomorrow. Whereas I'd much rather come in, and I know this isn't the most efficient way to train, but I would much rather come in and go, do you know what, I fancy doing this today. There's some staple lifts that I'll always do and always will do, because I know the importance of, you know, managing that. But I'll just come in and move, and I'll set my watch and go, right, I'm going to move for 40 minutes. I'm not going to touch my phone. This is my time now, and just see what happens. It's almost like play. And I actually noticed that with some of the stuff that you were posting, especially over lockdown. You know, you were doing a lot of stuff where you just move in and different exercises and that type of stuff.
Yeah. And that has been part of the sort of journey for me since I've taken a break from competing, was training became like work. So I would turn up, I had 2 or 3 hours of work to do. And that's like mentally and emotionally draining. It takes the joy out of it. Like when I started training, it wasn't because it was work, it was because it was fun. I loved being around the people. I loved the challenge of it. So this last year has been about making training fun for myself. And so having that aspect of play is really important. The thing that I think is interesting with that is, as adults, we come to this idea like training has to be a certain way. Like it has to look a certain way, a movement needs to look a certain way. But I think there's like there are foundational things someone needs to learn, like from a coaching standpoint, we're going to make sure that they have like, they can hinge at the hips and that they understand how to brace their core. And so like there are basic like things to make sure that someone's moving safely. But once someone's got that foundation, then I like to go, okay, so now that you've learned like this is a good way to squat, where you're going to squat safely, now can I give you 2 minutes and I want you to squat in every different way you can imagine. And I want you to play with stances. I want you to play with tension. I want you to play with like speed and see how your body experiences all those different positions.
Yeah.
And so like kids learn by playing, right? So we are just big kids. Why are we trying to take away the thing that like we evolved to learn that way?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Just leading into a couple of questions now, the importance of like finding a passion, because you obviously found a passion through CrossFit into powerlifting, and you know, once you find something that you love, then you're more likely to go and do it, whatever those sayings are. But also tied in that with, you know, the power of the community, because obviously what you're doing with the Shiro Life as well, and what I do with Movement Wins, and what Weight Watchers does, and you know, and CrossFit does, you build these communities who have kind of similar passions? How important is that for people to be able to stick and maintain to a program?
So this is like humans evolved as like social creatures. Like we literally, like this was the thing that was like a biggest takeaway from the isolation for me, because I've been here completely alone. So for like 4 weeks, I didn't see another human being. Now, so the thing I learned from that was like, oh, now I understand why solitary confinement is like such an extreme punishment, because humans are not designed to be like that. We need interaction with each other. And it's that social interaction that keeps us motivated. So being in an environment that's fun around people we enjoy being around is like so much more motivating than I think than anything else. Like you cannot particularly like the workout, but if you have people you really enjoy being around, like you'll keep turning up. So I've always said that to people when they're like, I'm looking for a gym. I'm like, find a gym where you like the people, because you can have a kind of subpar coach that really loves the people, and you're going to turn up and you're going to keep making progress. So
you build, build accountability within itself, don't you? You build accountability from just turning up and talking to someone, because you know, you might not go as far as exchanging numbers and making, you know, lifelong friends out of it. But you know that if you don't turn up, someone's going to, the next day you go and you go, oh, how, you know, where were you yesterday? You didn't make it. And that is such a powerful thing. We don't even realize that.
Oh, definitely. I have friends today that used to do the group exercise classes with me back in like 10 years ago when I was still doing those things. And we used to do Friday morning, we'd go to a class and then we'd have breakfast. And I still to this day am friends with those people. And several of them have, after I eventually started getting into CrossFit and coaching and all the other things, like a number of them have made the transition over as well. And then they've started to bring all their friends. And it's that the social support, and then it's you're impacting the community that's around you, because people are like, oh, that person's making progress. I want to have what they're having.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's that little bit of like, oh, they look amazing and they look happy and they've got making all these new friends. Like, I don't want to miss out on that.
And they're eating a plate full of pancakes. I want to do that.
Exactly.
Just last one for you, Jesse, because I think the message that you promote through everything you do is a great one, and people can kind of take notice of that. It's just around finding balance, and particularly, you know, for females, because the Shira Life is about empowering women. What does balance look like? I know it's such a broad term when we talk about health and fitness, but have you got any kind of views on that?
Balance is such a personal thing. So, like for me, this, like the last few years has been about trying to invest more time in play and in like my personal, like spiritual journey and those things, because for years I was so skewed towards work and training. And that's actually probably, it's one of the biggest questions I always ask when I have a new client. When was the last time you did something just for you? And I'd say, especially women, because majority of the people I work with are women, but the majority of clients, I'd say like 9 out of 10 of them will say like they can't remember. Like I had one client said to me, oh, I took my husband out for his birthday. I'm like, that's not about you. Like you might have had a nice time, but it's not like a thing that you've done purely for your fun. Yeah. And I think for the majority of people, it's that, how do I start to really schedule time for play and fun? Because like we shouldn't be working for the sake of work. Like our work should be giving us an opportunity to live our lives more fully.
Yeah.
So that's my belief on most people with balance. It's just like really prioritizing yourself and your relationships versus, like, I had this conversation with my business partner yesterday, Ray, and he said, like, oh, I'm just grinding and grinding. And I'm like, yeah, but like, what's the point? You're grinding so you can get burnt out and just like, and you haven't enjoyed any of the process. So one of the things that I try to practice now is each time I have, like, I've succeeded in finishing something. So I completed writing a program last week and I sent it out, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to take the afternoon off. And it's just to celebrate the fact that I finished something.
Yeah.
It's so easy to just get into your next to-do list.
Yeah. And never having an ending. That's what they say about to-do lists, right? There's always something to do. So you never get that feeling of euphoric feeling of finishing your to-do list for the day, because you can always add something to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's awesome. Jesse, I know that with the Shira Life, you're busy building that now. But where can the listeners find you? Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so they can obviously find me on Instagram at Jesse Akister. Yeah, and we'll have the site up before the end of the month for the shiralife.com.
Yeah, I'll tag that in. But thanks very much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me. It was good fun.